Happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org and this show in particular. Correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Mr. Robert Stone. Robert, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Robert came down from the top of the hill here in Rhinecliff.
A whole half a mile, I think.
A whole half a mile. Did you drive or ride a bike?
I drove.
You drove, yeah.
Like a good American.
That's good. What kind of car do you drive?
I'm driving my son's car right now, which is a 2005 Honda Civic.
Honda Civic.
I love it. And it's so much more fun to drive than my actual nice car.
What's your actual nice car?
It's a VW EOS, which is a hardtop convertible.
Oh, that sounds
Volkswagen.
nice.
It's a beautiful car, but I like driving Luke's car much better.
I've seen that.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luke's away at college. We were just discussing. But you've got two boys, right?
Yes.
What's
Caleb and Luke.
Caleb.
Yeah.
Also a really nice kid. Both are really
They're great
nice
kids. I'm very lucky.
Luke was friends with my boy, so I got to see him a bunch.
I could tell you a crazy story.
Sure. That's what we're here for.
I have a third kid.
Oh.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, during COVID, a third kid that I didn't know about, and you don't know about. So during COVID, my wife, we're all just sitting around at home wondering what to do. So my wife was on Ancestry.com doing stuff, investigating her family, which is like far more fascinating than mine. And she, at one point, one evening said, "Hey, Robert, you should go on Ancestry and check it out. You did the DNA test." Like, yeah, I did it 7 years ago. And I don't know, it was everything my mother told me. It wasn't any big surprise and blah, blah, blah. There's all this new stuff you do. So I was I just logged in, blah, blah, blah. And, I don't know if you've ever done it, but they have your relatives in order of how close they are, fourth, fifth, sixth cousin, fifth cousin, fourth cousins, third cousins. I don't have any second cousins because both my parents were only children. And it goes child. And it wasn't Caleb and it wasn't Luke. DNA match. My heart jumped out of my mouth. And
hopefully it's an elder sibling and not a younger sibling.
One would hope. But one doesn't know. Does one?
To find out.
Having watched The Crown, rewatching The Crown, I'm saying
more
one,
on Jerry Springer
one
after this
doesn't
message.
know, does one? And this person had left a message for me on Ancestry. You can do this, right? I just had a username, so he didn't know my name or anything. So, and the message had been left 2 years prior, saying, "Hey, hello, I'd like to know who you are."
Yeah. Right.
So, and he left his name and his email address and said, "Get in touch with me." And it's been 2 years, and I felt terrible. But I was but then I'm going through is this guy homeless? Is he a drug addict? Is he angry? You go through what are the worst case scenarios, right?
Documentary filmmaker, really.
Yeah. So. Anyway, so I took his name, which is an unusual name, and I put it into Facebook, and bingo, lives in Seattle, was born in 1986, 9 months after I was out in the Marshall Islands making my first documentary, and that's where he was born. And in those days, that was like going to the moon, right?
Yeah.
Pre-internet.
Yeah.
Had no idea. And he's got 2 kids, so I'm a grandfather.
Wow.
And so I sent him an email saying, "Hey, my name's Robert Stone. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I was out in the Marshall Islands making this movie. I met your mother." I remembered her name, so I wasn't a total
my
cad.
follow-up
I
question
remembered her name.
To discern exactly how much of a dog you were back then.
No, I was a dog, but I remembered her name.
Okay.
A dog who has a memory.
Okay. That's good.
It's not something I'm proud of, but I was there to do a job, but
1986, you're young and you're unattached.
7 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I told him the story, and he wrote me back, and I said we should do a Zoom call. Did a Zoom call. We just chatted for 2 hours and exchanged. He's great. He's great.
What a
He's great.
trippy thing.
So we just have kept up and texting back and forth. I told my kids immediately, and they were super, "That's great. That's cool." And they were
cool.
Texting and blah, blah, blah. And then my wife and I flew out about a year ago to Seattle, where he lives, to meet him and the family. And we spent a day together, and it was really wonderful.
Now, your youngest son, Luke, of whom we were just speaking, is out that way, right?
That's right. So they're going to hook up. Yeah. So Anyway, it's like the most incredible thing that's ever happened to me.
Wow. So what were you filming out that way in 1986?
I was filming my first documentary, which is a film called Radio Bikini, which was about the first atomic bomb tests in the Pacific in 1946.
Okay.
I made a documentary about that. And but I was actually out there making another movie because I wanted to go out there and do some filming for my movie, and I didn't have any money. So I hired myself out as a cameraman for another documentary, and I lived on this little island near Bikini for about 6 weeks, and that's where this encounter happened. And so I was filming that and then doing my own thing. But yeah, and I ended up going out to that part of the world quite a bit in the 80s, shooting films for other people.
Wow, because you were known as somebody who
I was a cameraman, and I was like, that was how it would make extra money and go on adventures.
And so Radio Bikini was 1986, 88?
Came out in 87, and it got nominated for an Academy Award.
It did. For what? Camera work, hopefully.
No, best feature documentary of the year.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's amazing. And who won?
We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to pshaw them anyway. Well, so did you go out to Hollywood for the awards ceremony?
Of course I did.
That's amazing. And did you... Were you surprised? They don't give anybody advance notice, right? It's actually a real surprise for people.
Oh, you get notice that you've been nominated, and then you go.
But I mean, they don't.
No, they don't tell you that you won.
So everybody who shows up writes a thank you speech.
Of course.
And where's yours?
I wrote one.
But where is it?
This
Where's
is an
it now?
interesting story. So what happened was, a group of Bikini Islanders came out to attend the ceremony, showed up in tuxedos and flip-flops, which was nowadays, everybody shows up in tuxedos and flip-flops, but in those days, that was kind of a radical thing to do. And there was quite a bit of they wanted me to do like a Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
Right, and there was quite a bit of pressure on me to do a stunt like that, which I really didn't want to do. And so the whole thing was very nerve-wracking. But I didn't win, so I never made my speech.
Right.
So. But yes, of course, nobody goes up and goes, "Oh my God, I'm so surprised." No, that's like
everybody reaches in their vest pocket.
They
write
down, "Oh my God, I'm so surprised," and then they practice that. Right?
And so, what was the issue that they wanted you to sort of stump for?
They were completely, they lost their island and they were moved off their island, and the Americans dropped an atomic bomb on it, and then continued to test atomic bombs on their island throughout the 1950s, and made the whole place totally radioactive. Yeah, they had a beef.
And that sounds like a legit enough reason to have a beef. Now,
but I was no Marlon Brando, so
Well, I bet
I kind of actually wanted.
I researched. I saw pictures of you from that era. You were much more handsome than Marlon Brando. So it's always Bikini Atoll, I think, when I read about this.
Yes.
It's not Bikini Island. Is Bikini Atoll the name of a group of islands? Or
it's an atoll, or an atoll.
Atoll, I don't know.
Is the rim of a volcano.
If you hold your tongue and say it, what does it sound like? Atoll. I know, it's all third grade jokes here, Robert.
Can I continue?
I guess.
I don't know where to go with that.
If you can find your composure after that fabulous...
So there's the rim. See, now I sound like an idiot.
No, but I'm the idiot. I don't know...
So it's imagine an underwater volcano, and so the rim of the volcano is right at the water line, and there are little islands and a coral reef that kind of connects them. So it's like a circle of islands. Right. That's an atoll. No. And so it's Bikini Atoll. See, you've totally ruined the story. Can we talk about something else?
We can, but I've seen volcanoes, and they're not like 20 miles across the rim. I mean, it's
sure they can be.
Can they? Okay,
sure.
So what's the diameter of the bikini?
About that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. So.
We're not 20 miles, not 20 miles, maybe like
10 miles,
5 miles, something like that. Yeah, sure.
But the nuclear tests ruined all of the surrounding
They just
islands.
kept bombing around,
And where were the people moved
to? Vaporized an entire island. There was one island that's just a crater. It's just like the whole thing went up in the air.
How many A bombs or N bombs or nukes, or how many did they drop there?
On Bikini, I think it was like 52. I don't know if that's exactly right, but it was a lot.
Uh-huh.
And including the biggest bombs that we've ever dropped.
Wow.
That were like 100 times bigger than Hiroshima.
Well, so when those things, there were air exploding or ground exploding, but probably not underwater exploding.
Yes, they did underwater as well.
Uh-huh. So those things must have had an environmental impact all around the globe, no?
No.
Isn't that sort of what we've been taught, is that nuclear bombs are going to just ruin life on the planet for everybody?
Well, you got to understand that if you combine, anyway, I haven't talked about this stuff in a long time, so I don't have the numbers exactly right, but if you combine the Russian tests, atmospheric tests, and the American atmospheric tests, it's something like 250 nuclear bombs, like large nuclear bombs. The Russians did a 100 megaton bomb, which was insane. It's unimaginable.
Right.
Which is like 1,000 times bigger than Hiroshima. Anyway, so we've actually had a nuclear war on Earth in that sense.
Many times over, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, kind of.
And you said it's about 250?
I think it's something like that.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Right? I mean, I've never heard that.
It is amazing because, you think one bomb and we're all, But
that's kind of what the feeling is.
Yeah.
Like one nuclear bomb is going to ruin your whole life.
Exactly.
You can't.
Well, it depends where you are.
Don't let this.
If you're underneath it, it's going to ruin your whole life.
So where were the Bikini Islanders shoveled off to?
They were moved off to another island. And in the Americans' mind, it was like, one island's as good as another. They're all like sand and palm trees, so who gives a shit, right? But
Right.
to them, this was their ancestral homeland, and their whole life, their whole culture is entirely based around place, I mean, as Americans, everybody comes from someplace else and we all move around. We don't have that attachment to place the way that most people in the world do.
Right. Some Americans just stay put their whole lives.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
It's not like you've been there for 1,000 years or something.
No.
In your one little spot. Right?
And you said you were in the Marshall Islands, which is hop, skip, and a jump from Bikini?
No, the Bikini is part of the Marshall Islands.
Oh.
It's like halfway between Hawaii and the Philippines.
Okay.
It's way out in the middle of nowhere.
I gotcha. So you did this documentary. I love that you started it while you were like a cameraman on some other job. And it was a feature-length documentary. What was the idea behind it? Just like, holy crap, look at what happened?
Well, the idea... God, I have not talked about this movie.
Sorry. I like to start at the beginning.
Good God.
After this, we're going back to England, where you were born. Ask you what you remember about that.
Well, the whole thing, this was a propaganda stunt by the United States to try to present, immediately a year after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to try to present the atomic bomb as something, just another weapon of war. Nothing special, try to make it seem like everything's okay. And so they created, it was a whole propaganda event. They invited the world press out there. They used half the world's supply of motion picture film, filming this whole thing.
Egads.
And the whole thing was a fucking disaster. And radiation, they did an underwater blast that just spread radiation everywhere. And the ships they had 42,000 American servicemen were there, and the ships sailed into the lagoon right after the test. And of course, on a Navy warship, you're sucking in water from the lagoon, right, as your drinking water.
Oh no!
And so anyway, it was just like, it was a big mess, and so all this film that they shot, they classified all of it and just locked it away in the Pentagon. And I got access to that, and that was kind of the basis for the movie.
Okay, how did you get access?
I interviewed the chief of the Bikini Islanders, and I interviewed one American serviceman. It was just their stories talking about their experiences, and then with no narration, and then there's all this archival footage.
So how did you get access to that film that was locked away in some army vault?
It took me 6 years to make the movie. It was a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests,
right? A
lot of help from people in the National Archives, and all kinds of stuff.
Huh?
Yeah.
And a lot of archival film. And I read somewhere on, it was Google or someplace.
If it's on Google, it must be true.
Yeah, that you're renowned for your use of archival footage.
Well, that's nice.
I thought maybe you'd comment on that. I'm trying to find the exact quote that really.
I am kind of an archive. It's true.
Yeah. So this bikini thing, before that, had you been sort of a researcher on stuff?
No. So what happened was, I went to college and I studied history.
Okay.
Which was super easy because my father was a historian. So I figured I could get through history pretty easy because I grew up with this stuff. And so my senior thesis was about the Bikini Island atomic bomb tests.
Okay, so you had done a bunch of research.
I, at that point, wanted to be a filmmaker. It's like, well, nobody's going to give me money to make a film because I've never made a film before, but they might give me money to make a film about something that I, at that point, turned out to be like the world expert on. As a 21-year-old person, I was the world expert on this one thing. And so I parlayed that into getting money to make a documentary.
And then you got nominated for an Academy Award.
And that's what I do. Like that's, I seriously, I thought I was going to go to Hollywood and make big feature films or be a cinematographer or something. Right. And then because of that, this is what happens. I made that film and that did really well. So, hey, do you want to make another one? Here's some money. So, okay, well, I'll do that. And the next thing you know, you're making archival documentaries.
Right.
That's what happened.
And how many years have you been doing that? I guess I could count for myself. Like 40. 30. That's a lot. Almost 40 years of making archival documentaries.
Yeah. And I haven't only done archival documentaries, but a lot of the stuff I've done has been archive based. Yeah.
Have you done any fictional filmmaking?
I did one.
Oh, World War III?
Yes.
And what was happening with that?
Well, that was actually an archival documentary, but it was fake.
Yeah.
It was a fake documentary.
And what year did that happen in?
98, I think.
And it was a fake documentary. You made it for German TV?
Yeah.
How does all of this happen?
They came to me with this idea, and I said, oh, that could be pretty cool. To just take all this archive stuff out of context and imagine what would have happened if the Cold War had ended differently.
So you used actual archival footage. You just took it out of context. You rearranged it.
I totally rearranged it, and then we did a lot of shooting. Like one thing, we rebuilt. It was a pretty big budget film. We rebuilt a section of the Berlin Wall in Berlin, and we reenacted the fall of the Berlin Wall. But instead of like the German border guards going, "Hey, right on, man," and they opened fire on people and killed people. And so we filmed that, but then we cut it in with all this other stuff that's real, and so that triggers this event. And then we did stuff like, we used a lot of stuff. So remember, this was George H.W. was president during this time frame, end of the Cold War. So that was George H.W. also went to war with Saddam. So there's all this talk of war that we had archival footage. He is Hitler reborn, that stuff. And there was all the stuff that we could take out of context. So, well, instead of talking about Saddam, he's talking about the Russians, right? So we did this one. I think my favorite scene, we did this whole thing where James Baker in the real history, James Baker had a showdown at the United Nations with the Iraqi representative, right? So we took the James Baker part, and we built this UN Security Council on a stage set at Astoria Studios in New York, and filmed our fake Soviet foreign minister.
Sounds like a blast.
And color graded it so it looked identical with the video, and had them talking to each other. So real historical figures are having an interaction with our fake actors, and it's totally seamless.
Right.
So it was a fun movie to make.
Amazing. All right, how about a plug for the color grader, Chad Smith?
No, not on that one. But Chad's great. Totally plugged Chad, but he didn't do the color. That was all done in Germany.
Oh, in Germany. Yeah. That sounds like a whole bunch of fun.
It was totally fun.
And did anybody complain?
There was one big problem, though. The Germans.
Oh, geez.
So there was all these fake interviews. I'd scripted the whole thing with fake interviews, fake talking heads.
And do you write your stuff yourself?
Yeah, I wrote the whole script.
Okay.
So, but like we're on set doing an interview with an actor, right? And I just wanted them to improvise. Look, this is a basic thing I want you to say, right? Just like to make it natural. No. You don't Germans don't improvise. So, like, literally, we were on again at Astoria Studios, and in order to change like a verb, a call would have to be made to Germany.
Oh, geez.
And a meeting would be called, and then they would discuss whether this change in the script could be done. And then they'd call us back like 10 minutes later and go, yes or no. And anyway, it was just, the whole thing was a nightmare. And the film never turned out as I had hoped, but it was an interesting experience.
And I'd just like to apologize to all German listeners who are all jazz musicians.
Yes.
That thing you said about improvising doesn't pertain to you.
Yes. Just keep supporting Ukraine and you're okay in my book.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's been kind of a charmed career for you in a way.
I have led a charmed life.
Do you look back at crossroads in this trajectory and think, oh, what if I had, and wonder, are there places where you think, oh, wow, fate steered me this direction, and I still wonder what that direction might have been like. It's like a Robert Frost poem, kind of what I'm asking.
Well, I guess the biggest one was after I made Radio Bikini, I'm out in Los Angeles, I'm nominated for an Oscar, like, okay, that's kind of cool. So I thought, well, this is my chance to parlay this into doing what I thought I wanted to do, which was to make, real movies, right? I mean, not that documentaries aren't real movies, but you know what I mean. And so I applied. Well, I should back up. When I got out of college, I applied to every film school in the country, and even film schools outside of the country, and they all turned me down. I got rejected from all of them.
Because you were a history major.
Yeah. There's an interesting story of that too, but there was another thing that happened too. But anyway, I was rejected by all of them. So after I just said, fuck you, I'm going to go make my movie. It took me 5 years after that to do it. And I finally did, and it was a huge success. And so then I thought, well, now I'm going to apply to the best film school in the world, which is American Film Institute in Los Angeles. And I got in. And I was like, wow, fantastic. And at the same time, I was offered all this money to go make a movie, a documentary, an archival documentary. And I chose the archival documentary.
Yeah. Now, and here's what I want to pick up on. You just said you thought you'd want to make real movies. And then you sort of said, well, not that docs aren't real movies, but still it came out. I mean, is there some attitude in the industry that, there's the real movies, and then there's documentaries.
Well, there was and that. Now, now documentaries are like the coolest thing, and everybody loves them. But in those days, there definitely was that. And I've always been inspired. I don't really watch that many documentaries. I'm much more inspired by fiction films, and that kind of, I think, that love of fiction films is infused in the kind of documentaries I make. Like, I like to think they are anyway. But I don't.
But in what way? How so? Which elements from that are infused in your work?
Just a storytelling, like just in, I've never used narration in my films. I want to make films that are emotional and like take you on a journey and involve you and in a way that certainly at that time, most documentaries weren't doing that.
Right.
So
you made this World War III thing, which was a fiction film, as you call it, and that didn't make you think, oh wow, I want to do tons more of this, or did people just keep bringing money to you for more documentaries?
No. My career took a total nosedive. That's what happens in life. You get, things are great, and then they're not. And there was a real dry spell there, and I'd just gotten married and just had my first kid, and I didn't have any money.
The first kid that you knew about.
The first kid I knew about, yeah. And my dad died, and he'd left me a little bit of money. It wasn't much, but it was a little bit of money, and everybody I knew was investing in the internet bubble and everything. And I just said, I was kind of desperate. I was like, okay, it wasn't enough money to do anything with, but if I invested it, maybe something, right? So I invested it and I lost it all.
Oh, no.
And I was so pissed, like in the internet bubble, right?
Right.
I was so pissed. I was like, I'm never going to invest in somebody else's dream again. I'm going to invest in my dream.
Oh, that's nice.
So I had this film I really wanted to make for a long time about the kidnapping of Patty Hearst. And I was fascinated with this subject. And
what was her SLA nickname? I'm trying to... Tanya, right.
Yeah. And so I figured out a way to cobble some money together from some television stuff I was doing. And other things, and then went like hugely into debt on credit cards and everything. It was like completely irresponsible. But I was convinced that this film was going to succeed. And if it didn't, I would just give up filmmaking and go to law school or something.
As you had been recently convinced that your stock pick was going to succeed.
But I was invested in myself. Like I had, right? That was the thing.
It's great advice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it fucking paid off.
That's good.
You know?
So how does that pay off? You made the film. Somehow you got the money to do it.
I made the film, and I begged, barred, and stealed, and I had people working for me for free because they believed in it. And we went to Sundance, and we sold it, and it went all over the world, and it made money for everybody. And
so who bought it?
PBS bought it.
Okay.
But for television, but it also sold everywhere. It did really well. It was out in movie theaters all over the country, and it was great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And
it totally, I got all my money back, paid off all my debts. That experience, we'll put it this way, the success of that gave me a long-standing deal with PBS to make the kinds of films I wanted to make. Archival films, for sure.
That's pretty dreamy.
The kind of films I wanted to make that's gone to the present day. With like very little interference or anything. It was just like, here you go.
And you're still making films for PBS, and
I just finished
got a new film coming out soon. What's the new film?
It's called Taken Hostage. It's about the Iranian Revolution and the hostage crisis.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So it's a 4-hour documentary.
Amazing.
Airing on November 14th and 15th.
Wow.
Over 2 nights in 2 parts.
2 hours per night.
Check it out.
Check it out on your local PBS
on your local
station.
PBS station.
Yeah.
From viewers like you.
So how did you choose that? What was interested? I mean, so who was that, during Carter? Or, I mean, it was way back when, right?
I'd been fascinated by that since I was in college.
Okay.
I was in college and I was studying history, and I took a lot of courses with this guy named Harvey Goldberg, who was this like radical Marxist historian. He was just a total genius. I loved him. And he is the one actually who got me into like thinking about becoming a filmmaker, like as a profession, because he'd spent a lot of time in Paris. He was like really good friends with Jean-Luc Godard and all these people. And he was like, anyway, we would talk about this stuff all the time. But he was great. But right during the hostage crisis, when that happened, which the embassy was taken over on November 4th, whatever course he was teaching, he just tossed it out the window, said, I'm going to teach you all about the real story about America's involvement in Iran. And his course was taught in the largest auditorium on the University of Wisconsin campus, which was enormous. University of Wisconsin had 50,000 students. This auditorium held like 600 people, and it was standing room only. I mean, they were legendary lectures. And he would just rip off his glasses and speak extemporaneously, go way over time, just talk for hours, and just taught us everything about how the United States had overthrown the first and only democratically elected government in the Middle East, and like reinstalled the Shah as a dictator, and then supported their like infamous secret police, Savak, and how this had all led to this thing that happened where Americans are all perceiving themselves as victims of these mad mullah terrorists, and they're just all horrible people. Right. Well, no, yes, they're doing this horrible thing, but there's a backstory to this too. Yeah. And so I always just stuck in my mind that I'd never seen a documentary that really dealt with this, because in all the years since, all the wars in the Middle East, we have the first Gulf War, and we have the Second Gulf War, and then we have the Afghanistan, and I've seen lots of documentaries like you going into Afghanistan, and that's all interesting, or the going into Iraq, all the fascinating documentaries, a number of them made by friends of mine. But you can't understand any of this stuff that's happened without understanding this momentous cataclysmic event that happened in 1979 with the overthrow of the Shah, which is historians who study this, there's like 3 major revolutions that have happened in modern times. There's the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Iranian Revolution. And we're still living in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution. Right. Right. And so I thought it'd be important to make a film for an American audience about, what happened? How did we get here? Why have we been involved in all these wars in the Middle East all these years? Like, what's this whole root of this? So that's really what the movie's about. It also totally transformed the American news media. I mean, it was the birth of 24-hour news.
Right. Right. I'm trying to remember the Ted Koppel, I think, was the guy.
The vodka's kicking in. So if I'm talking too much, tell me to shut the fuck up.
Well, no, drink more. We're just getting to the really personal stuff.
Are we?
No. Well,
We started with the personal stuff.
Did we? I can't remember that far back.
Third son?
Oh, yeah. Wow. So how did you get to Wisconsin? You were raised in Princeton, New Jersey, I think?
Raised in Princeton. My father was a professor at Princeton and a history professor. And my sister, who's super brainy, and 10 years older than me, was still in college when I went to college.
Okay. Because
she got a BA, then she got a master's, then she got a PhD.
And what is she doing now?
She's a professor.
Of what?
She's an archaeologist.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
just kind of
so
history.
I was told I had to go to a state school. And so...
Because your sister was using up the entire college budget.
Yeah.
Well, did you think about going to Princeton? I'm sure there could have been some sort of deal there, no? Don't they generally do that?
I wasn't a very good student. I was dyslexic.
Oh.
So that was a big
academic
impediment.
And you say was, past tense?
Well, no, it's something you always live with.
Right.
Always. Sure.
Okay.
I still live with it.
Okay. Yeah. But
it doesn't impact me now because I'm a filmmaker. I mean, it does impact me. No, that's not true. It impacts me every day. It doesn't. It was at that point. It was like a real struggle,
right?
As a kid, before anybody knew what dyslexia was. I never knew that I was dyslexic until about 15 years ago.
And how did you discover that?
I had a woman who used to work for me, who ended up becoming a special ed teacher in the New York City public school system. And we were out having a drink one night in New York, and she was telling me about all the kids she's dealing with who, and she said they're all dyslexic. I was like, what's that? And she described it to me, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's me. And I burst into tears.
Amazing.
I burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, that explains so much. Because I really had no idea.
And it explains difficulty reading and retaining.
No, not retaining. It's people don't have dyslexia. I think that they you get like letters backwards or something.
Yeah.
It's not really that. It's like it's a really your brain just the I don't know. Because I'm dyslexic, I don't know what it's like, but I imagine like if you look at a digital watch and it says like 105.
Yeah.
Most people look at that and it immediately goes, it's 105. A dyslexic person has to go through another processing, right?
Can you describe?
But like this, I like my analog watch immediately. So like visual,
really,
like dyslexic are very good at a lot of artists are dyslexic.
Yeah.
Architects,
right?
Filmmakers, right. People. So it's just a different way of processing information that can be really messed up because you don't fit into a lot of the way that schools tend to teach,
sure.
Right? But if you can manage your way through, oftentimes you can be very successful. There's a lot of like famous CEOs who are dyslexic,
Right. So can you describe that intermediate step between looking and seeing the 105 for the time and then what?
No, because it's like my life. I don't know.
Right.
I'm trying to describe what I imagine for you might be, assuming you're not dyslexic.
Yeah, I don't think I am.
Yeah. So, but it's still a struggle for me to read.
But I'll tell you what, I worked in advertising for a number of years as a writer. The writers work with art directors. And over the years, I worked with 3 different dyslexic art directors. Mm-hmm. One who really had a super hard time reading. One who just couldn't write and couldn't spell and couldn't get words straight. Super smart people. Right. And one who just sort of had sort of a mild, who claimed he had a mild version of it. But, you say lots of artists and there it was, 3 art directors and 2 of them major award-winning art directors. But they had it bad.
Well, sure. I mean, if you're not if the written word is not something that flows immediately for you, you're going to be drawn to visual imagery. And it's just like, blind people become really great at hearing, and, vice versa. It's
but
like
there
that.
you were in college as a history major.
Well, that's why I majored in history, because I knew it all. I didn't even have to go to class. It was like I was brought up with this stuff.
And did your dad read your papers and
He did
help you
sure.
out?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Sure. Yeah.
And what was his special area of expertise in history?
Well, the English Revolution was his thing.
And he was English.
He was English.
And
I'm English. We emigrated here when I was a kid.
How old were you?
When I first came here?
Yeah.
I was 5.
Uh-huh.
Or 4, late, almost 5.
So old enough to be.
But then we
aware
went back
of
we still kept our house in England. We went back every year because my father had to go back to research. So I spent my whole childhood going back and forth.
Wow. And so you have relatives who you're probably friendly with over there. That's nice. And the kids, your 2 boys, do they like England?
Well, they got British citizenship, so that's
they do. That's nice. But they're not really doing anything with it, are they?
Well,
Not
you
yet.
never know.
Not yet. Not yet.
Things may happen.
Nice to have.
Not that things are so great over there, but yeah.
No, but oh boy. Well, so you finished this documentary, and it's going to be on PBS. When did you say it's airing?
November 14th and 15th.
Right.
On public television
And
at 9 p.m.
Was there some thought of getting it on the air on November 4th, which was the date when?
No, because nobody cares about the anniversary of the hostage takeover. No.
Right.
No. But it's, given what's going on in Iran now, it's very timely, because the people who overthrew the Shah and took over the country are now facing the same sort of rebellion that the Shah faced.
Right.
And like one of the things we talk about in the film is one of the interesting things for me in making it. The Shah, I always thought, well, he's kind of an asshole, and had these very negative views about him, and all of that is true. But he also did some good things. He's just an interesting character who sort of is both good and bad, which is always intriguing for a storyteller. One of the things he did was he was very proactive in liberating women in Iran. And
wow,
women in the 1970s had all the rights of any woman in Paris or London or New York, right to abortion, right to divorce, right to everything. And they were very involved in the government, and they had jobs, and it was in the cities. Obviously, in the countryside, things were different.
Right.
And no hijab or anything like that. And the revolution that overthrew him was largely a revolution because you got a rising middle class, and the Shah wanted to maintain absolute power, and he basically obliterated any kind of liberal opposition. So the only viable opposition to him was the mosque, right?
Okay.
And so liberals, people who wanted democracy, wanted to continue women's rights and stuff, all coalesced around Khomeini because he had the power to overthrow the Shah, which he did, right? And the idea was that Khomeini was going to go back to Qum, which is the religious capital in Iran, and just become a Ayatollah and, go to the mosque. But no, he ended up assuming total control. That was never the plan. But most Americans just think Iran, this monolithic, it's this, fanatical Muslim country that oppresses women. It wasn't always that way.
Right. That's very interesting. So you made this thing, and it's like, here's the real story, and it's especially pertinent now with what's going on there, as you say, and it's going to air on PBS. How many people will see that? How many people in general? Do you get? Does PBS share their viewership data? It must be a matter of public record somewhere.
Well, my last film was an exception. My last film
was the Apollo,
the Chasing the Moon. Yeah,
right.
That was seen by over 8 million people, and that was
okay. All right, let's just sit with that for a second. That's got to be kind of an amazing.
No,
feeling.
That was insane.
8 million people. So that did very well.
And that
for
was just
PBS.
the initial thing. So I don't know what it is now. And it showed that was just in the United States. It was broadcast in 13 countries.
And that was just in the United States and just on PBS.
Yeah.
And PBS on demand.
But I think normal is like maybe, 2.5 million, 3 million people.
That's still pretty amazing. Yeah. So 8 million, and if say Sophia Coppola, somebody makes a movie, they're getting a percentage of the profits, right? If it's 2 million people see it or 20 million people.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Not in documentary?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work
Never.
that way for anybody.
Oh, really?
No.
Why did I think that like actors and directors and producers made more money the better a film did at the box office?
Well, there's a lot of creative accounting that goes on.
Right. Okay. But
and now it's all done with streamers, and Netflix notoriously doesn't ever release the data about who's watching.
But in theory, if a movie does great, the director of that movie, a fiction movie, will get more money despite the creative accounting.
Yeah.
Does it work that way in documentary as well?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, good.
But in my case, it didn't because I conceived the project and had private investors to begin with.
The Apollo project.
Before I went to PBS with a project. Yeah,
Chasing the Moon.
With Chasing the Moon. So when the film was done, the profits went to my investors, not to me.
Okay.
Which is all fair and good.
But PBS, I mean, it's
we
not
don't
like...
want to talk about money, do we?
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, their profit, they get money from corporations, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and people, listeners like you.
Viewers like you. Yes.
Yeah. And so where do they get profits? If that's...
They don't. They're a nonprofit.
Right. You said the profits go to your investors.
Well, there are foreign sales, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a split. If it does very well, you get a cut. But it's a very minor cut.
Right. Yeah. So if 8 million people see it on PBS, that helps you with the foreign sales.
Yeah.
And to get a sweeter deal on.
Back when there were DVDs, that was very lucrative.
Right.
For everybody. I would just occasionally, you just go to the mailbox and there would be like a giant check just like out of the blue.
DVD
That's
sales.
Just vapor. I get like checks for like $23 now. There's nothing. Literally. They send me a check for like, okay. Yeah, there's nothing. That completely vaporized. So I just get paid for when I make the movie. I get paid to make the movie, but I don't get any profits from it.
The profits are all still there. They're just going to a different place, not to the filmmaker.
Right. They don't go to the filmmaker.
Where are they going now?
They're going to, well, PBS is a different thing, but mostly, they go to this. Whoever puts up the money gets the money.
Right.
That's the way it is.
Okay.
And if you're lucky enough to get a tiny little fraction of that, then more power to you.
Right.
You don't do this to get rich.
Somebody told me that the other day. Well, you don't go into being an artist to get rich.
No,
I was shocked. I'm still shell-shocked.
Yeah.
I was misinformed, I guess.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Well, so what's next?
Oh, what's next?
Yeah. And do you hate that question? Does everybody?
Well, there's only so much I can
that.
say about it. I'm back into outer space.
Oh, you are?
I'm making a film about. It's kind of one man's search for extraterrestrial evidence of extraterrestrial life.
Oh, nice.
But it's a film about this one guy.
So when you say one man, I imagine kind of a crackpot.
No. This guy is
colorful character.
He is NASA's lead engineer on every deep space mission for the last 50 years. He's literally a 1 in a million genius. He also produced the original Cosmos series with Carl Sagan, and he's written a slew of science fiction books with Arthur C. Clarke, one of which is about to go into production with Daniel Villeneuve, the guy who did Arrival and Dune. That's going to be a huge movie. So he's an incredible person.
Wow.
But so what interests me, and now I'm probably telling you too much, but if only 12 people are listening, it gives a damn.
Yeah, so far.
He's an interesting guy to me because I'm interested in all this stuff. I'm kind of a space nut. And that to him, yes, there's the search for life, the robots that go out to Mars and are going to the moons of Jupiter and all the actual stuff, and then the James Webb Telescope that's looking for exoplanets and all that's all there. But it's a spectrum of also UFOs and people who believe they've been abducted by aliens, which he's fascinated. We don't believe them, but he's like spent time with these people because he's interested. And science fiction, like where does our imagination go?
Right.
And all of this. And ultimately, the film is about climate change. Ultimately, it's about preserving this beautiful paradise that we live on in a universe that appears, as far as we know, completely devoid of life.
Really? I find that incredibly far-fetched. That we're the only sort of...
Oh, no, I'm just saying as far as we know.
As far as we know.
We
Gotcha,
don't know.
gotcha.
It's almost certain that there is, but it could be a form of life that, it could be an octopus, or it could be something we've never, something that lives in methane or bacteria. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Could it be intelligent life? Probably somewhere. But the thing is, we'll never know. So it's all an intellectual conceit and a mental exercise.
So is that the opinion of this guy at NASA that you're talking about in this?
What?
That we'll never know?
No, he thinks we might know.
Okay.
He thinks
but
we
you
might.
just said we'll never know.
I don't think we'll ever know, but he thinks we might know. We might get a signal of something. You never know.
Right. Like in any
But it's
second.
also, we'll never connect because it's all so far away.
But he's got to sort of show up to work every day thinking...
He does show up. He's 80 years old and he goes to work every day.
This might be the day when I get the signal.
It's possible.
Does he approach his job with that kind of optimism, or it's just sort of like...
He's an extraordinary person.
Well, it sounds like a blast. So you're starting this. You're going to get funding because you get, according to another film friend of mine, you get funded for everything.
Who told you that?
I can't divulge my sources. You'd have to talk to the station manager here.
I wish I got funded for everything. That'd be nice. Just to go,
So do you have funding for this next film already?
I got partial funding. I need to raise more money.
And what will you do with partial funding? Will you like make a?
I've shot it. I've shot it.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. I shot it, and I got to cut a. This is how it happens. So you cut like a teaser.
Yeah.
Like a 6-minute
right.
sizzle reel they call it, and then you have a pitch deck, which is like a PowerPoint, and then you go and you pitch to investors.
Wow. And this will air also on PBS.
No, it's not for PBS.
What network is likely to want to air this?
I don't know. I'm going to make the film, and we'll see what happens.
I got a friend at Epics. It sounds kind of up there.
Yes, I got a friend at Epics too. It's probably the same friend.
Yeah, she was here talking a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Wow. Well, that sounds really exciting. So you shot everything for this movie already, but it's not all edited. You haven't put it together yet.
No. Okay. I'm doing that every day.
How every day? So when do you think you'll be done with that?
It'll probably be out like 2024.
So you're looking for funding to sort of cover the stuff you've already done, or just
just to cover the enormous cost of like actually making this into a movie.
Okay. Yeah. And what are you editing yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the costs? You got to pay yourself.
Well, I got to pay myself. There's a shit ton of archival footage.
And you got to buy that
science fiction movies and like everything. That's going to cost huge amounts of money.
All right, science fiction movies. Now, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, great. So exciting. All this kitschy old science fiction movie footage.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't wait. And
I can't wait.
Do you have a working title?
Spaceman.
Good title.
I think so.
And what's the chance of a theatrical release for something like that?
We would go for that. Although, theatrical is a dying world. Sorry, my friends at Upstate Films.
Oh, no.
But, I love the theatrical experience, and it's something really close to my heart. I think it's really important because I think there's certain films that require a commitment of time where your phone is off and you're just like, I'm going to go watch this movie, right?
Right.
And sometimes, sometimes there are movies that challenge you, and you might, if you're sitting and watching at home, you might, what's that? Let's watch something else. Like, this is right. But if you stick with it, you'll have an experience that could change your life, right? And so it's yes, the whole, people talk about, it's really the whole communal experience, and I think there's something to that. Certainly, you're watching a movie and somebody in the front row laughs, and you go, that's funny, and then everybody starts laughing because they get the joke. There is some of that, but to me, the most important thing about theatrical is the commitment to sit for 2 hours and watch somebody's vision. Right. And let that wash over you. Sometimes that's a total disaster and it doesn't work. You go, that was sucked. But sometimes you experience things that you'd never watch at home. And it's those films that I worry about whether they're going to survive in a world where everything's funded by streamers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it used to be more sort of the communal experience, I think, and now for me, part of it is the experience of leaving my cell phone in my freaking pocket for an hour and a half or 2 hours, like not being distracted by that.
It's the lack of a distraction for 2 hours.
Yeah,
That's important.
so do you watch a lot of movies, a lot of fiction
All the
films?
time, yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Like how many a week?
Well, I watch a lot of series. So
Okay.
I'm watching every night. I'm watching something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. And you get swept away, like totally like sucked into the...
Well, I'll tell you right now, we're watching The Crown again for the second time because the 5th season is about to start in a couple weeks, and that's going to destroy the royal family. And so I just wanted to go back to the beginning. It's perfect. It's perfect. Like every episode is perfect.
Wow.
It's genius.
And
It's one of the great series. It's up there with Sopranos and Breaking Bad and,
Wow.
maybe a half a dozen others. It's one of the great series.
When is it set? I don't know anything about it.
It's about the royal family and about Queen Elizabeth. It goes from the beginning of her reign all the way up, season 4, which is Diana. We're into the Diana world right now.
But
this series is gonna take down the royal family.
But it's not a documentary, right?
It's a
historical fiction?
huge budget historical fiction. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And based on real shit. It's like
Right.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. I highly recommend it.
And that's on Netflix? Mm-hmm. I'll check it out.
So I like the last couple of weeks, I just wanted to watch, to prepare myself for season 5. I just wanted to go back and watch everything. Because, you watch season 1, then you wait a year for season 2, you wait a year. I just wanted to watch the whole thing and binge it. And that's what I've been doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. And when you do that, do you leave your cell phone in the other room?
Yes,
Do you
I'm
intentionally-
totally religious. My wife, she's always like multitasking. For me, that's like a religion to me. I put my phone down and I watch.
And
That's what I do.
Yeah. And do the kids ever do that?
My kids are out of the room, out of the house.
No, but
they're away.
weren't always. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm guessing you always watched that way.
Yeah,
I
sure-
watch shit with Mossy, and there's things we watch together, and he's on the phone all the time. I'm like, dude, did you just see that? He's not, his attention is not glued to the screen, and so he's not getting the same sort of rewards that you enjoy.
Yeah, no, my kids, well, I kind of forced them into it at an early age.
Yeah.
They're actually, although, maybe to a fault, like I think Luke watches, or he did watch too much television.
Oh, nice.
Like locked in.
And
I remember showing Caleb and you remember Roland? You know Roland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were really good friends. And another kid, 3 of them, when they were like 10 or 11, I showed them 2001. I said, you guys got to watch this film.
Oh, boy.
And I thought, this is really, I don't know how it's going to go over because they're MTV generation or no, post MTV, TikTok, whatever.
yeah, it's worse and worse.
Anyway, their attention deficit disorder is like, to the max in terms of media.
Right.
This is a super slow movie. Anyway, I remember walking in there halfway through and they were all like lined up on the couch, like completely transfixed.
Really?
Totally transfixed.
Huh.
I was like, okay.
Wow.
That's interesting.
And so did that
They've
make
never
you
forgotten
think?
it.
What's that?
They've never forgotten it.
And did that make you think, okay, next film I'm going to show them will be this? Whatever.
I spent their childhood just constantly showing them as much as I could until they became, obstreperous teens who like just want to go do their own thing. But Caleb is a complete movie nut. He's turned me on to all kinds of like weird esoteric stuff.
That must be super satisfying.
Yeah, and Luke too. So yeah.
Nice. And tell me again what Luke's doing out there.
Luke is studying botany.
And Caleb?
Caleb is studying design and computer coding, and he's into some stuff. I every time I see Caleb, I was like, everybody also asks me like, what is it you're doing? Can you explain it to me? And he explains it to me and he goes like, okay. And then the next person who asks me like, I don't understand.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. And will they be home? I mean, Luke's all the way across the country.
He's not going to come home for Thanksgiving because he'd just be on a plane and get off and have a bite of turkey and go back. So
Right.
it'd be
But
ridiculous.
like winter vacation, Christmas
Yeah,
week.
he'll be back for a month. Yeah.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
I'm also back too. I love having the kids back. How do you like being an empty nester?
It hasn't really like hit me yet.
Yeah.
It's only been like 6 weeks. So, there's good and bad. The house is clean.
Oh, I guess I thought Luke had gone.
No, he took
before.
a gap year.
Oh, right.
So he's
right.
been around every day, just as part of the.
So it's brand new.
So this is really brand new.
Well, thanks for not crying when I asked you that. Yeah, I don't
But
like
I
it.
miss him.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah, kind of sucks.
And let me ask you this: you live here in Rhinecliff with your wife.
Yes.
And you had dated her way back when, and then you reconnected later.
I not only dated her, I married her way back when.
So your first and third wife is the same person.
Yes.
That's amazing. And how did it happen that, were you guys always sort of like in touch? Were you Facebook friends or?
No, we were always friends.
Right.
There was, after we split up in our 20s, there was a couple of years of bitterness there. But after that, we were very tight friends.
And
I would go out, she got married, I would go out to LA and stay with her and her husband in her house, and
right.
It was all totally cool. Yeah. So we just were always friends.
Right.
Huh.
It's kind of a romantic story.
Yeah, I always tell people I got the best of both worlds. I've got like I'm like a newlywed, but with somebody who I've known forever.
Right.
So.
And have you known her forever? Did you go to like high school or college together?
We met the first day of high school.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. In Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton High.
Yeah.
Amazing. And were her folks academics as well?
No. She just showed up. I'd never seen her before because I'd gone through, whole school system. She showed up first day of high school. She'd grown up in the Middle East.
Wow.
And so there was this exotic, interesting person who had this whole incredible life experience. And I had this sort of European background. So anyway, we kind of just hit it off.
And was she an American who'd grown up in the Middle East? Or
Yeah, her dad was in the State Department.
Oh, boy.
State Department.
State Department. Yeah, I've heard tell of that. All right, I got some questions here in the piece of paper for you. This one, I think from Carl Anderson. What music are you listening to?
Old shit.
Old shit.
I kept really up to date with music and was always excited about new music until Caleb was freshman or sophomore year. And since then, I'm sorry, I'm like an oldster. I just go, the stuff I really love to listen to is the stuff I listened to in high school and college.
And what is that?
Like David Bowie and, the Stones. And
did you ever meet
when that shit comes on, I just it's my happy place.
And did you ever meet Bowie? He was around here in Woodstock and stuff for a while.
I saw him once, him and Amon walking around. But,
oh my God, she's really striking. All right, here's a good question. I think it's also from Cole. What do you think NASA or Musk should plan next?
Musk should not buy Twitter.
Yeah,
and should shut the fuck up.
Okay. I think almost all of America.
That?
Yeah. Now there's a thing out there that on the sort of a meme.
Actually, everybody should get off Twitter. This is my. You want to know my plan to save America? I have two things.
Yeah, I do.
Everybody should get off Twitter, and we should nationalize Amazon. That's my plan to save America. Use all the money to pay for health care and education.
Oh, that just
it's a natural monopoly. Every business sells through Amazon. Nationalize the fucker.
I'm sure Bezos would be down with that.
Fuck him. Send him into orbit.
Yeah. Get Musk to send him into orbit. Well, I like that plan. Here's what somebody said. Make sure you talk about his Chernobyl documentary.
I did not make a Chernobyl documentary, but I knew you were going to ask me about.
I didn't see
it's
that
not
you
a Chernobyl
had,
documentary.
But this fella who said this, Jonathan B. We'll just say.
Jonathan. Yes, of course.
Also, yes, that you had the balls and wherewithal to walk onto the Chernobyl property without permission and shoot stuff.
That's true. I believe I'm the first filmmaker to go inside the Chernobyl reactor.
How did that happen?
Because how much time do we have?
Well,
look, I made a movie that came out in 2013 called Pandora's Promise, which is a film that profiled a number of serious environmental activists who had changed their mind about nuclear energy
Right.
in the face of climate change.
From
being
to
against
pro.
to pro. And obviously from our talk earlier in this interview about Radio Bikini, I was certainly in the anti-nuclear camp myself. But I had changed my mind as I saw...
And this doc came out 2 years after Fukushima.
That's right. Well, we were making it
which
when
I found very noteworthy.
When Fukushima happened when I was in production. Yeah, on the film. So yeah, I made this documentary that made the environmental case for nuclear energy. And I got to say, it came out 9 years ago, and I think everything in it I've been proven right. Because like every year we are slipping further and further behind. And you look at look at what's going on in Europe. Germany's like ridiculously still shutting down their nuclear power plants, and people are just freezing in the dark because of stupidity. So,
right. So where
Matt might disagree with me here, but yeah. So that's the premise of the movie, and everything in that movie I stand by.
And where could people find this movie?
It's on Amazon Prime. And I think iTunes. It's easy to find.
Okay.
Pandora's Promise.
Pandora's Promise.
Yeah.
People should check it out, as well as checking out The Crown, which evidently is perfection.
It is perfection.
And we are at the end of our hour.
Okay.
It's gone by so fast. Robert Stone, amazing. I knew it was going to be great having you here. And thank you so much for coming and answering all these questions. Whoever tuned in, thanks for tuning in. Have a happy Friday night. And thanks for being here on radiofreerhinecliffe.org.